Hi, this is the second part of the spline modeling tutorial. In it, we will use the tools and techniques that were discussed in the previous part of the lesson in practice. The first object will be the Lego head from the 2D to 3D short video. First, we need to add the reference into Cinema 4D. To do this, switch to the front view and press the hotkeys Shift-V. We have such a window with settings. Go to the Back tab. Click on the three dots and select the picture. Adjust its opacity and place it so that the head is in the center of the composition. So we added a picture to the background. This object can be created using the Lathe tool. To do this, we need to create a half of the object using a spline. Now let's adjust the points. Half of the object is ready. Apply the lathe generator and add a spline to it. Let's see what we got. Here the shape is too rounded, so let's make it rougher. Like so. Now we need to add eyes and mouth to the head. Let's make the eyes using primitives. Create a sphere and adjust the size. And you can deform it a little by scale. Make it flatter and more elongated. Now let's position this object. Move it down slightly and rotate it so that it adjoins the object. Further, not to create the same object, you can use symmetry. Let's adjust the display of symmetry. Choose XY. Let's add a mouth. You can create it using the sweep generator. Using a spline pen or arc, create just such a half. Make it smaller and rotate it 180 degrees. Next, add it to sweep. Now we need a spline as a profile. I select the N side object. Add it to the generator. It should be the topmost one. Let's adjust its radius. Set the value to 0.5. Now to round off the edges, go to Sweep, select Cap, and add roundings. Get the spline and rotate it. We can see how it twisted a little, so let's add subdivisions to the N side. The head object is ready. Let's add all the elements to a null object. Let's give these objects a color. Go to the Basic tab, and in Display Color, click On. Set a color. The first model is ready. You can hide it for now. Let's create a pair now. Let's add this illustration here and place it so that the pair is in the center of coordinates. We will create the basic shape in the same way as we did with the previous model. We need a lathe generator and half of the object's profile, in the form of a spline. Let's apply lathe. We got the basic shape. Now, using a spline and a sweep generator, let's create a stick. Create a spline. Then create the end side and make it smaller. Place these objects in the sweep generator. Now, in the sweep generator, we will adjust the shape of the stick. Go to the Object tab and slightly increase the end scale. Add roundings. And now we need to add subdivisions on the mesh. I will also decrease the thickness of the stick a little. This needs to be done in the end side. Go back to the spline and add subdivisions. And so we see that the top is two-faceted. We need to add the number of edges in the inside object. I will turn on the ground shading lines mode to display the mesh. Go to the front view and create the rest of the objects. Let's create a leaf using the Extrude tool. Select the pen tool and draw a leaf shape. Next, place it in Extrude and adjust its thickness. Decrease the offset parameter. I'll set it to 1. Let's go back to the spline and slightly adjust the shape of the leaf. Let's add chamfers to the leaf. Go to the Extrude generator. Set the roundings in the Caps tab. If you deform this leaf, you need to add subdivisions to the caps. To do this, go to Caps Type and select Regular Grid. The object does not have a completely correct mesh, but in this case it can be deformed. Create a new element and select the sphere object. Make it smaller and position it. Set the type to hexahedron so that it consists of square polygons. Now let's create them with the tracer generator. I create 3 null objects. I immediately add them to the group. This will be the left leg. Now I will set up the null objects and apply shape sphere to them. Let's position them in space in some way. Next, we place them in tracer, and as you remember, the main thing here is hierarchy. The topmost object is the start of the spline, and the bottommost one is the end of the spline. In Tracer, select the Connect All Objects mode. We have created such a spline. Let's set up its type and adjust subdivisions. Next, this tracer needs to be placed in the sweep generator. Let's set Nside as a profile. Add it to sweep and add tracer there. Adjust the Nside size. This is the character's leg. We can group all this into one object and duplicate it. This will be the right leg. Rename and set again the null objects. Now we need to create the character's boots. For now, I will hide the objects to keep things simple. And we can create the boots using the loft generator. To do this, we will need to make the sole, then duplicate the splines and slightly change their shape. Then, using Boolean, we cut out this part of the heel. Select the pen tool and create half of the sole. Since I only created half of the sole, I need to reset the endpoints so that the symmetry works properly. I select a point and go to the coordinate manager. I set the x-axis to 0 and click Apply. Now select all the points, right-click, select the mirror tool, and adjust the screen mode. We bring the tool on the right side, and we get a full spline. Finish off the shape slightly and adjust the points. The shape is now ready. The spline needs to be rotated 90 degrees. Select the points and rotate them in the XZ plane. Now we will position the points in the center of the coordinates and lower them a little. The y-coordinate managers can be set to 0. Hit Apply and they will all align. So now duplicate this spline and move it a little higher. Then duplicate it again, move it higher, but adjust the shape a little. Let's go to the top view to make it easier to adjust the shape. Select the top point and offset it. That is, we are customizing the shape of the future boot since it will be spline-based, using the loft generator. Duplicate the spline one more time and adjust the shape again. Now let's add these objects into the loft generator. Let's see what we got. Such a thing is created. It already looks somewhat like a boot. We are currently missing one or more splines. Let's duplicate and place them. Now adjust the shape of all the splines to match the shape of the boot in the reference. It's better now. There are not enough subdivisions now, so go to Loft. Select the Object tab and add segments. This is the kind of thing we get. Now you need to cut the heel in this place. But first, let's compare the shape with the reference because it seems to me that the toe of the shoe is too long. Let's adjust its shape. So now we need to cut out the heel. To do this, create a cube and make it smaller. Cut out this shape using the Boolean generator. Create a Boolean, add the Loft object and the cube to it. We get this thing. As you can see, here it is rounded, so let's adjust the cube. Let's add fillet to it. In the bool generator, do not forget to check Create Single Object so that the model is a single object. Add subdivisions to the cube. Set up caps in Loft. In this case, the mesh is not perfect since the generator creates a polygonal mesh according to certain algorithms. There are several ways to solve this problem, but all of them are based on adjusting an editable polygonal object. The first way is to convert the model into an editable object and adjust the mesh manually. The second way is to retopolize the finished model. You can also create topology from scratch, but it will be difficult for a beginner. We will cover these methods in the next lesson on polygonal modeling. In fact, such a mesh is not a problem. You can safely use it, but if you add deformers, you may encounter problems. For example, let's add a bevel deformer to create a chamfer here. I put the object in null to apply the deformer, and add bevel to it. We see that the deformer is not working correctly. So in such situations, the model can be manually finalized at the polygonal level. Let's undo this. So the boot is ready. Now we need to add it to the character. Turn on the visibility of objects. Adjust the position of the boot. We can put it in this null so that when animating the foot in the future, the boot moves along with this controller. We add it here and reset the parameters. As you can see, the boot is a little smaller than in the illustration. So let's increase its size. Let's create the second boot. Drag it holding down Ctrl to duplicate and place it on the other leg. Let me remind you that we put objects in null so that when we animate the legs, the boot moves with the controller. So the pair is ready. Let's put the objects in null and give them a color. Excellent. Now you can hide this object and start creating the next model. Go to the front view and add a new reference. I will select this object from this illustration. Using it, I will show you how to create a simple animatable eye setup. Adjust the position of the reference so that this object is in the center of coordinates. The first thing you need to do is create a base. Select the sphere object. Set the type of subdivisions to hexahedron. I will set the radius and the number of segments. Now create such a spline. Select the rectangle and adjust its dimensions. Apply rounding and adjust the radius. Now we need to create two circles. Show object sphere and variable splines to avoid confusion later. Now, using the spline mask, make sure that the big circle is cropped with this rectangle, and the small circle is cropped with the big circle. To do this, we need two spline mask generators so that we can crop the shapes. And to control all these things with primitives, we will refer to the connect object. That is, we create a connect for each of these objects. This will be the rectangle connect. Add a spline object here. The next connect is little circle. Add another connect, big circle. Now we add objects to them. Next, create a generator with spline mask. First, we will make the large circle cut off with this rounded rectangle. Place the rectangle and big circle in a spline mask generator. Now you need to set up the spline mask mode. We select the end mode. Next, if I select the big circle and start moving it, we can see that it is clipped by the rectangle object. Now let's make it so that the small circle is cut off by the large one. For this, we need to duplicate connect big circle. Create a new spline mask. Add these two objects to it. And select the end mode. Now, if I move the small circle, we can see that it is clipped by the large one. Right now, we are only missing the rectangle, so I duplicate its connect. You can now collapse the spline mask. Next, we need to make all splines flat. For this, I create an extrude and add a rectangle to it. But first, I'll rename all the objects so I don't get confused. Place the rectangle connect generator in the extrude and set the offset to 0. We get such a flat thing. Next, we create a new extrude. This will be our little circle. We add it to extrude. Set offset to 0 and rename it. Create another extrude. This will be big circle. Place the spline mask in it. We also set the offset to 0. We have 3 flat objects. Next, we need to project them onto the sphere. To do this, add each extrude object to null. Select the object, press Alt-G to create a group. I will immediately rename these groups. So to project these objects onto a sphere, we will use the shrink wrap deformer. Add it to null object. Add the sphere to the target object. In the parameter mode, select the target axis so that all points of the object are projected to the center of the sphere. Let's do the same for the rest of the objects. You can just copy the shrink wrap to the rest of the null objects. Great. We need to increase the thickness of all of them. The cloth surface generator will help us with this. Hover over the generator. Select the object and press Alt. A generator is created, and the selected object becomes its child. We repeat the same for the rest of the objects. Select the cloth surface objects. Go to the Object tab and set subdivision to 0. We set an arbitrary thickness. Now it doesn't matter what it will be, as it can be adjusted in the future. We get such a model. We see that it lacks subdivisions to fit well with the sphere object. So go to Extrude and adjust caps. Open all extrude objects. Select them. We can select regular grid for all at once and adjust this grid. I will set the value to 3. We see that the mesh is not quite perfect. It contains triangular polygons, which are also randomly located along the edges of the object. Since we are using the generators to create the mesh, we cannot greatly affect it. You can only choose more or less optimal grid values. If we convert the mesh into editable objects, we will not be able to get those mask effects that are currently working, thanks to the spline mask generator. So in this case, there is no need to create a perfect mesh. With enough polygons, no bugs should occur. As for the perfect mesh, we'll learn how to create it in the next lesson. Now we will adjust thickness of each element. To do this, select the cloth surface and set the thickness parameter like this. Next, we can color the objects for convenience. Here we turn on the light and set it. We got such a thing. Now let's add this to the null object to make it easier to work with it. I will turn on the visibility of the rest of the objects and place them. Using the spline modeling method, we have created 3 models. Your homework assignment is to create your character using the techniques and tools you learned in this lesson. And this concludes the lesson. Till next time.